I'm Denise Restauri, and I have a lot of different titles, but my favorite one right now, as I'm teary-eyed from watching Maggie, is to say that I truly am Maggie Doyne's friend, and I hope by the end of the day you all are saying that also. She has moved my world. There are so many things in the world that need to be built and rebuilt. And you could do that. Maggie is a perfect example of building with bricks and mortar and bamboo in her case, building orphanages and schools. Or you could build social movements. Or you could rebuild a city after a natural disaster. And every one of us in this room has that ability. We really do. And we're calling it our power capital. That we all have the power capital, the influence, the networks, and the resources to change the world. But the question is, what happens sometimes? How are we using that influence? How do we use our power capital? And are we using it in the best way to change the world? So today, in this session, we are truly going to have a conversation. We're going to have a dialogue on the floor where you all are going to be speaking not to us, but to each other. But we're going to kick off the conversation with 4 brave women. And I say brave for many reasons, as you will see, but brave because they've all agreed to not have questions in advance. And they've agreed to have a conversation. So I'm going to do a brief intro because you have their bios, but Kathy Eldon, Kathy's son was 23 in 1993. He was on assignment in Somalia as a photojournalist and was killed. Kathy was inspired by Dan. I'm getting teary-eyed between Maggie and Kathy. Kathy was inspired by Dan as she created the Creative Visions Foundation, which is a global organization for creative activists, so for creative people to join together to change the world. Helene, Gayle, as president and CEO of CARE USA, is building, and this is about what they're building. She's helping people build communities that are better, that are healthier, that are more prosperous, and are sustainable. In the past year, they have directly reached over 83 million people, and that's directly reached, and tens of millions more that they've indirectly reached. Lauren Bush-Lauren, I'm going to read what her Twitter profile says.
Oh gosh.
Designer, hunger activist, social entrepreneur, earth lover, and feed bag peddler. Okay, thanks. And feed bag peddler. She's building an organization that creates good products to feed people. Good products like this feed bag, which, and this is my Oprah moment, that you all will be taking home with you today as a gift from Forbes. But the profits when you buy feed go to do good. They go to feed children. Inezita Gay is the head professor of L'École Van Cleef. It's a school that Van Cleef has built that is open to the public. And what's shocking about this is, it's a school that teaches the trade of designing jewelry. And in the industry, in the high design industry, those secrets are what differentiate each design house from each other. So it's like the Coca-Cola secret formula. And Inezita and the president of L'École have said that it's their duty, though, to share those secrets so that we don't lose that art and we don't lose the passion in the artists that are creating that art. So what we're going to do is we're going to picture this. We're at lunch, and you're walking past this restaurant, and in the window you see these 4 women, and they're very animated and very engaged, and you think, I want to be there with them. I want to be at their table. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to invite you in to their table, and then we're going to really, truly invite you into their table because we're going to ask you, just as if you're at a big table, to talk to us. And talk to you all, not to us. So we're going to kick it off, though, because everyone loves a personal story. And I'm asking the members to kick off the conversation with a story that starts with, I saw, or I heard, or I learned. That aha moment, that passion, that point where you said, I have to do this. I have to use my power capital and change the world. And Kathy, we'll start with you. Okay, we're going to rearrange that. We're going to rearrange that. We will start with Helene. Dr. Gayle, will you start?
Okay. Gee whiz. You know, I guess I've had a lot of those moments, but you know, I think about, just to give a little bit of background, CARE, as you mentioned, is an organization that works around the world. We work in 80 countries around the world focused on eliminating extreme poverty. And part of what I've tried to do since I came to CARE 7 years ago is to really reshift the way we think about ending poverty and really focusing particularly on girls and women. And I can talk about that more in more detail. But you know, people often ask me, so why girls and women? A lot of reasons why, I can go into that more. But you know, on a very personal level, you know, I shifted from a career in health and focusing a lot on HIV and AIDS. And as I traveled around the world, particularly in Africa and Asia, where HIV has its greatest impact on women, you know, I started to realize that, you know, more and more that the reality of why women get HIV more than men is not, you know, just about the virus, but it's about the very real ways in which women's lives are different than men, the way that women are not valued equally, the way women's bodies are not valued equally. And, you know, I can think of a lot of moments, but I remember being in India and seeing a girl who was only 13 years old who was already HIV infected. She's a girl who had been sold into commercial sex from a poor family who had no other means to be able to feed the family, and many girls are sold into sexual slavery. And we were doing rounds in the hospital, the physicians, the caretakers, and this girl was in incredible pain. And the group of doctors who were going through and looking at patients, the girl came up and said, you know, I'm in pain and I'm suffering, and the doctors systematically brushed her aside and you know, talked to her in a local language. And I asked, well, why didn't you pay attention to her? You're a doctor, she's sick. They, you know, basically said, you know, she's a girl. Her life is worthless. She's going to die anyway. We've got important patients to look at. We have important patients to see. Later that day, we visited a home for women and children with HIV. And I came up to one of them, and a woman was gesturing to me, and I didn't understand what she was saying. And somebody interpreted that she heard that I was a doctor and wanted to know, you know, would I talk to her? And I said, of course I would. And I talked to her, and she, through a translator, was telling me her story. And I embraced her like I would do anyone. And she started crying, and she told him afterwards, you know, I've never had a doctor touch me. The fact that you were willing to touch me and embrace me gives me the sense that I am somebody, and now I feel like I want to live and make a difference. And so, you know, it's those sorts of things when, you know, I realize that, you know, we talk about the inequality that we face as women here in this country, and we know that we have a lot of work to do. And I was in the back, saw Cheryl Sandberg on, and you know, she's really ignited an incredible dialogue. But when I think about what it means to live in a country where you absolutely are not valued, where people won't touch you because they think you're untouchable, where your only recourse is to sell your body in order to put food on the table for your children, you know, that sort of dehumanizing that women face all around the world made me realize that if I was going to be working on an organization that could have an impact on poverty, one of the greatest things that we could do is to make sure that women were part of that equation, and that whatever we did, we put women and girls' needs at the forefront.
Thank you. There's something about moderating a panel with emotional stories, and I'm getting very teary-eyed listening to them. Lauren, will you share your I heard, I saw, I heard, I learned?
Sure. I guess for me, I saw and I learned at the same time about poverty and about the issue of hunger, that approximately 870 million people around the world are food insecure, which means they don't necessarily know where their next meal is coming from. And that's a hugely massive and overwhelming statistic. But I had the amazing life-changing experience when I was a sophomore in college to travel with the UN World Food Program. And my first trip was to Guatemala. And for those who've been to Guatemala, you know it's a very quick little flight. You're not going to sub-Saharan Africa. And in Guatemala, visited many different programs, but one of the things that really struck me was a therapeutic feeding center where kids are taken when they're very, very badly malnourished. And there was a little boy I was introduced to who couldn't hold himself up, so we had to sort of cradle him in our arms. And he looked to be about 3 or 4 years old. In fact, he was actually 7 years old. And that was the, physical effects of hunger. So seeing a little boy, obviously so stunted physically, mentally, and really in so much pain, truly just because of where he was born and just because he didn't have food, I was extremely upset by that. And then on the hopeful side, we went to a school and kids were playing, and it was the kids I was used to seeing on playgrounds and being, teasing each other, and they were all eating a school lunch. And it was one of these aha moments of, gosh, if that little boy had just had the opportunity to go to school, to get this school lunch, how different his life may have been. And not his parents were caring parents, and for whatever reason, his community and parents just could not, sustain this little boy. And we found out a few days later he passed away. And it's just so unfair. And what really is shocking is you come back to life here in America or wherever you live, and you go about your life, and the fact that there's such a disparity in this world is it doesn't sit well. And you kind of over time forget about it a little bit. You live your life. None of us should feel guilty, of course. We should, live our lives to the fullest. But the fact that that existed was just so shocking to me. And I wanted a way to allow others to participate in the fight to end world hunger in a way that's not overwhelming, because I know, most of my peers at the time in college weren't thinking about joining Peace Corps or the World Food Program or CARE. They had ambitions of being a lawyer, an investment banker, whatever they wanted to do. So I wanted to create a way for them to get involved with hunger that was quick and easy and very tangible, because hunger, it's meals, it's nutrition. We know how to solve, or we know what people need who are hungry. And that's when I thought of the idea for the feed bag. So for every one of the feed bags sold, the first bag, it feeds one child in school for 1 year, and every product sense has a number on it. So the bags you get today each give 10 school meals, thanks to Forbes. Thank you, Forbes. And all the products, it's really a way for people to get involved with hunger, because it is making a difference. And I visited children in over a dozen countries around the world, and they really rely on the school meal as really, probably their only meal a day. And it's enough for them to be incentivized to go to school. In countries actually where girls' education just isn't valued, and they'll, educate their boys before they send their girls to school. The World Food Program has like food bribery, for lack of a better word, and sends their girls home if they have a good attendance record with extra food rations for the family. So it makes the parents extra incentivized to make sure their girls go to school and stay in school consistently. So many wonderful programs, but yeah, cheers for that program. And that's why I was really, empowered to start Feed. And Feed really is supported by mainly women. Obviously, we're selling accessories and bags. So just for me, being around the power of women, talking about redefining power, and the empathy and the nurturing nature of women, and the way they've really embraced Feed and this, concept of what we're trying to create has been so heartwarming to me and encouraging. And on my lowest days, it's generally a woman who sort of, lends me a helping hand. So it's been very powerful.
Thank you. And Inazita, your story?
My aha moment is actually a because my experience...
Hold on 1 second. Or I can give you my mic.
Not that far.
Oh, it's collaboration at its best.
Thank you.
My aha moment is actually aha voila, because it spans the two countries, France and America. I have always been blessed, and when I mentor young girls, I always say, don't do anything I did, because I failed upwards. But through incredible blessings, I've lived my life in these great maisons of jewelry, starting out as an art history student many years ago. And have had the ability given to me to reinvent myself just about every 5 years. And the most recent reinvention was the birth of this little school. I feel very humble with these great ladies who are saving lives all over the world, but as Mahatma Gandhi said, live your life as if you're going to die tomorrow, but learn as if you're going to live forever. And since I love to learn, I love to teach, because in order to truly learn, we must teach. And after this whole life lived among the most exquisite jewels in the world, but working very hard, I had a chance a couple of years ago, thanks to Van Cleef and Arpels' involvement with the Cooper Hewitt, to start teaching children, because that's one thing I'd never done. And after all these years, some Saturdays spent teaching children at the Cooper Hewitt Museum how to play around with design, being inspired by the jewels they'd seen, was the most rewarding thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. And this little school was born Valentine's Day 2012, where we have a chance to teach these secrets that those of us who were blessed enough to live our lives within these maisons have learned. But you couldn't learn them unless someone sat down with you and shared them. And these were wonderful things that need to be shared. Why? Jewelry on its face might seem frivolous and indulgent, but actually it's the type of jewelry that is art and that's intimately connected with everything about being human and everything about the evolution of humans. Is an art form, and all the different artists who create this jewelry are artists who must learn for 20 to 25 years by the old methods. We were discussing education methods last night. These people, young people, 20 years old, come out of being the top of their schools and sit down on the first day, and they start out just the way someone does at L'École Van Cleef and Arpels, which is to sit and watch people try, fail, try, fail, 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 and after long patience, be able to create these arts. The single thing I'm the most proud about my company is a little piece of paper. It's not even a plaque, but it's a little piece of paper in our atelier Place Vendôme. And this atelier for high jewelry has this little piece of paper which says that the French government has declared it to be part of the living heritage patrimony, okay, but patrimony is very much feminine also. The patrimony of France, because you'll see one person my age, no hoary with age, H-O-A-R-Y, and you'll see 4 or 5 people like that, or like Maggie, around them, watching, trying, and creating. These arts are precious, and they're feminine empowerment, jewelry, and I use the word feminine advisedly. Feminine empowerment comes from loving jewels. You know, there was an old story in the Iliad that when Odysseus wanted to make sure that Achilles didn't hide from the war, the world's first draft dodger perhaps, his mother, who was a goddess, had hidden him in the Gyneceum dressed up as a girl. Odysseus went in posing as a jewelry merchant. As soon as he came in with his tray of jewelry, the girls gathered around, giggling and playing and trying on jewelry. And then Odysseus said, "But I have something very special." And he pulled out a sword. Very beautiful jewel-embellished sword. Achilles ran over and started to play with the sword, at which time Odysseus felt brave enough to tear off his girl's clothing and reveal him as Achilles. So we are girls, and girl power is that nurturing that Lauren was talking about. It's what Tory Burch was talking about earlier. Power is the ability to create change. And wonderful Lourdes Lane, power is the ability to let children, we include boys, use their power of their imagination to make their dreams come true. So today, let's all learn as if we were to live forever, and we have this incredible opportunity with these amazing ladies. That's my aha, voila moment.
Oh, thank you. And Kathy, your moment. You can use mine.
Okay.
It's okay.
I needed time. because I'm going to share a story that I haven't really told before, or parts of it. So I needed a little bit of time. So my I heard my son say, Mom, because he was British, Mom, don't worry, everything's going to be all right. Now you'd say, hey, that's normal. That's what kids do with us. But I heard him say that 4 days after he was killed. And he was stoned to death in Somalia by a mob. Didn't understand that he and his colleagues, 3 other guys, were there to try to tell a story of a terrible bombing that went horribly wrong, and lots of people died, and they called to bring the journalists over, and they were just trying to tell a story. So that boy was killed, and he was a really special guy, and everybody's child is so special, and Dan was an ordinary kid with an extraordinary view of the world and his role within it. And he used the power of media. He was a photojournalist, and he told stories that need to be told about problems that needed to be solved in Somalia. And he was killed. And I heard this voice inside me, and I don't talk about that because you look at me like a poor grieving woman, tragic, you know, gone a bit nutty. But I heard it. And I knew that there was something I was supposed to listen to. And so it was like, okay, guide me, you know, help me, because I am broke, I'm broken, I don't know how to do whatever it is I'm supposed to do to make things all right. So I started talking about journalists at risk, and I started talking about the injustice of the fact that people who are trying to tell stories that matter are being killed, and that year there were 54 of them. And in speaking, people gathered around me, and the Associated Press and Reuters, they are opposing people. They came together, and together, we were able to create exhibitions and books, and eventually a film called Dying to Tell the Story that went all around the world. And it was so exciting to see the power of that sort of like purpose within me that I couldn't have done a darn thing alone. It was everybody gathering around who listened to what I had to say, and I saw that power. And I thought, okay, you know, it was like that little voice inside me, Mom, you got to do more. You got to do more. You got to be more, feel more, love more, give more, collect more. So I carried on. And the next thing we did was somebody found Dan's work and created a book. And that book of journal pages of this kid who was 22 years old when he died. But that book inspired a kid named Blake Mykowski. Anybody know Blake Mykowski?
Yeah, Tom's.
Yeah, he started Tom's Shoes, and he credits this book called The Journey is the Destination with his inspiration. And there was another kid called Jason Russell, Invisible Children, and he credits that crazy book and that crazy kid who died to tell a story as being his inspiration. So the book went out, and it wasn't me, it was all the people who gathered around, but it's the power of the message, I guess. And then I started thinking, I've seen all these amazing people doing things, creative, active spirits that are passionate about a problem, a situation, something that needs to be solved. I have to do more. So I started a foundation, and I knew nothing about starting a foundation, but I met an amazing woman who you're going to meet later today, and her name is Ava Holler, and she's sitting right next to Annette Richardson. And they're both the people I'm most scared of today in talking about my story, because they really know the power of story, and they were very critical of me before I went up. So guys, I'm doing my best here. Okay. So Ava Holler, who is getting the AARP a mentorship award, came on board. She knew I didn't know anything, and she mentored me, she nurtured me, she helped me to create this foundation. She brought me the first person that we worked with, Jessica Mayberry. Jessica was a 24-year-old kid, millennial kid, wanted to work with illiterate Indian women. I mean, how crazy is that? To teach them how to use video, to tell stories about their lives. I mean, crazy. But I listened to her, and I believed her, and I sent her to people who are way smarter than me to try to help her learn how to teach video, or learn video for that matter. She is now, Video Volunteers is now the largest producer of community-based videos in the world. She has hundreds of illiterate, barefoot Indian villagers who are telling stories. They are waging campaigns against the untouchables. It's mind-bending. She even has a network. Look her up, Video Volunteers. So over the last number of years, we have about 85 projects and productions right under us at this minute. One of them is right here in the room. Slater, wherever you are, raise your hand. She's a really cool kid. She's 20 years old, right over there. Slater is running something called Inconvenient Youth, and she is so inconvenient. I saw her today. She's wearing jeans with holes in them. I said, ooh, you really dressed up for today, didn't you? I'm sorry, Slater, I wasn't trying to be mean, but, you know, it's Forbes, for God's sake, you know. Try. But anyway, she's way cool. Our organization is really essentially run by a 22-year-old, Haley Pappas, who's here. Haley, wherever you are, just raise your hand, because she's so amazing. These kids are wild, and she was trying to brief me today, and, you know, in the cabin for the last week, saying, okay, Kathy, you have to talk about the, oh God, what are they called? Living on One. Bunch of college students living on $1 a day for 56 days. They've started a movement across this country about microfinance. They're teaching microfinance to college kids. Landfill Harmonic, you probably heard about them on 60 Minutes. It's mind-bending. They make instruments out of trash. And they are teaching people about waste management. I love this lady. You were making me feel so good. About waste management, about collaboration, coming together, using your creativity for good. So we now are all about people using their creative spark. It doesn't matter who, what, how, where you are, you have a creative spark and you know it. And sometimes that creative spark is lost, covered up, smothered, but you have it. And so today, the message for me right now is I continue to hear. I'm hearing right now this voice in my head. I don't know what it is. I think it stands still on my shoulder. But that message is, that voice is saying to me that we all have to hear. We have to continue to hear. And in the hearing, we listen. And in the listening, we hear the stories. And in the stories, we come together, because it's not about any one of us as an individual. It's about all of us collectively coming together. And I am so grateful to Denise and to Moira for creating this opportunity for us to come together to scale up, as Annette Richardson said. She said, change can't come soon enough. We have to scale up, and it's not about individuals, it's about the collaborative efforts. When we listen, we cooperate, we collaborate, we co-create. And as Mr. Chobani, his name is Hamdi, but I can't pronounce the last name, but as Mr. Chobani said yesterday, because we don't know where we're headed, but he said, when you walk the way, you find the way. What is it? When you walk the way finds you, I think it is. But anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you all.